Oh, hello, everyone. Just getting things started, and then we'll get our guest in here, and we should be good. Happy Saturday afternoon, everyone. As the way it goes. And let me actually hit Discord too. There we go. Okay. This down here, this up here. Hopefully everybody's having an awesome Saturday. Oh, and in case you want to join us on Discord to discuss things, because that's what we like to do. Oh, crap. Where's my invite link? It's in here somewhere. There we go. There you go. You can join us on Discord to have the discussion there as well. And now let's go ahead and... Wait, what? Oh, there we go. That's why. What the hell? There we are. Boom. Yay! So I started a little early, but we will be starting up 3 o'clock Mountain Time, 2 o'clock Pacific Time. So this will allow for people to get here, to get into the chat if they want to. And just like the last time with the Magical Girl Why We Geek, I'm encouraging you guys to get involved as well. The questions that do get asked, feel free to answer them in the chat, and we'll probably even read them off because this is going to be a thing, I think, from here on in, is if I have YouTube guests, then you guys get a live episode of it. And the actual episode for the RSS feed will hit the RSS feed soon after. I'm not sure if I want to still go with my usual of it needs to be up by the end of the month, but there you go. That's at least the plan. Like if at most it's going to be the end of the month, at the very least, it might be a week or two later. Oh, and we have our guest here.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing all right. How about you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Can't complain.
Good. Now I probably should take care of this now because I can already hear myself in your speakers. Do you have some headphones that you can put in?
Yeah, let me grab some.
Okay. We don't want to have confusion with people. Okay. I can't be all unprofessional anymore and have gum on the podcast because you guys won't like it. Here we go. Let's just make sure everything is working. Cool. Everything working? Uh-oh.
Does that work?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Uh-oh. Can you not hear me?
I can still hear stuff from my computer.
Ah, there you go. I was actually wondering, what the heck with the echo? We fixed this problem. Why, YouTube?
I know. Hold on.
Still thinking chapter is not hiatuses.
Is that better?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. And I don't hear any echo on your end, except a weird buzzing, but I think that's it. Oh, are they Bluetooth headphones out of curiosity? Oh, and just lost the mic. Yep, I can't hear you anymore. Uh-oh. This is what happens, guys, when we do this live. Nope, still can't hear you. Let me work this out on our internal chat there. So oh yeah, that's right. Old school snowball mics can do that. I forgot about that. Well, as soon as we get everything up and running, then we'll be good to go. In the meantime, send your hatred to the Shadow Blazer 3000 because he is being a whiny little biatch and won't watch some damn Shounen. Even though technically, Alex, you've watched Shounen. So there. You gonna start suppressing my posts? Okay. Getting ready to do a bunch of tech support. Now then. No! We're going to start doing the Marceau, man in the box. There you go. Shadow's too busy with dot hack and magical girls to worry about Shonen. And yet, some of the magical girl shows that he's watched technically have a classification as Shonen. So, yeah, he could join in on this one. Oh, poor Shay. We're working this crap out, guys. Don't worry about it. Anything? Okay, earbuds. Is it working? Yay! I didn't invite you because I knew you'd reject it, Shadow Blazer. because you'd sit there and go, Shounen is for wussies. And that's why I didn't bring you in. Sorry, Shay, I'm just making fun of my compatriot, the Shadow Blazer. That's the way it goes. Let's see here. Can you at least hear me, Shay? Okay, cool. We need to work out the mic and all that fun stuff. Just sit him down and make him watch Black Clover. That's a lot harder than you're making it out to be, Art of Anime. I'd probably need, another 3 people to hold him down. That's like as hard as trying to get him to finally sit down and, watch some Dragon Ball. Because it won't happen. Uh-oh. I don't like the face I'm seeing, Shay. Are we just having some issues with the mic, Shay, or?
One.
Huh?
How does that work?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did we get this working?
Is it choppy? Or
no,
is it okay?
It's fine. It's fine.
I'm using my AirPods.
Okay. Actually, Art brought it up to me too. Like, we could still use the snowball mic. I actually forgot the snowball mics do that from time to time. It's been a long time since I've used one.
Yeah, I think I had to actually change the settings on the Google Hangout. I think that's where the issue was coming from. It was still coming from my built-in speakers instead of it coming from another source.
There you go. Okay. Well, at least we got it all figured out. And now you can join me in berating the Shadow Blazer for never ever trying Shounen, even though he's technically tried Shounen.
What?
Well, because here's the thing. Like, he's a big fan of pretty much the way that he looks at it is Shounen anime is mainstream anime, and therefore he's such a hipster, he won't ever watch it. Okay. That's not me saying that, people. That's him saying it. I'm literally using his words verbatim. And, like Dot Hack wouldn't technically qualify as Shounen, but he's watched Cardcaptor Sakura. Cardcaptor Sakura is technically, one of its classifications is Shounen. He's watched Yu-Gi-Oh! That technically has a classification of Shounen. It's just the popular Shounen he hasn't watched. So every time I bring it up on a live stream or when we're doing Let's Play content together, he's just like, I will never watch Shounen. I'm like, dude, seriously, you've watched it. You've watched it so many times you don't even realize.
Yes, watch Shounen. There's so many good Shounen shows. I actually grew up watching Shounen before watching anything else. Even though Sailor Moon was my first anime, after that, most of the shows I watched were Shounen or shows that were deemed for guys. So like Dragon Ball Z, Yu Yu Hakusho, Rurouni Kenshin.
Yep.
All those shows I grew up on.
I forgot Kenshin. Yeah, he's watched Kenshin. I didn't finish Kenshin. He did.
Well, Kenshin is so good. You have to finish.
No, I just never got my hands on the final movie. Because he had it, I think, and I don't think I ever borrowed it from him. But all of my local places where I would rent these DVDs never had it. So I've technically just never seen the final movie, and I haven't seen the live action one that came out. And don't you, Art of Anime, don't you dare make fun of Yu Yu Hakusho. That is my jam. Don't you dare make fun of it, because it's gonna get.
Yu Yu Hakusho
gonna
is
get
so good.
I watch that show
Yu Yu
yearly.
Hakusho is so good.
I have
really.
Yeah, unfortunately, my DVD collection doesn't work in my Blu-ray players anymore. So I had to recently this Christmas buy the Blu-rays. But yeah, I watch that show yearly because it's not just a good show as far as I'm concerned. It also has just a lot of really great nostalgic value. So at that point, it's like, I need, if I need my romantic craze, I got to go watch me some Yusuke and Keiko. That's just the way it goes.
Yes, they were definitely like an ideal couple because Keiko was such a badass. I mean, let's be real. She was the only one that could whip Yusuke into some kind of like into some shape, and Keiko was always a soft spot for him. So that was when you saw him kind of just melt and become a little bit less of the badass and more of like real.
This is a joke that me and the Shadow Blazer made for many, many years. I don't know if it actually has made a Let's Play. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alex. We're like, if you want to create the ultimate villain in any of these shows, just make the girlfriend the villain. Okay? Because if you think about it, like Kenshin is completely unstoppable in his series. What's the one thing that could possibly stop him? Kaoru. Kaoru would stop him like flat. You want to stop Yusuke, even like at S ranking demon level, Keiko.
Yep.
That's how you stop them.
Their girlfriend's like their kryptonite.
Exactly. So it's actually one of those jokes I wish that those abridged series would do, is just they would create their own arc where the girlfriend becomes the villain.
Yeah.
Because it would be freaking awesome to be able to
it's kind of just like with Sailor Moon, how they made at one point Darien was the villain because he was taken over by the Negaverse, and he became their villain, and it was so hard for them to do anything because he was their friend.
The only thing that bugged me about that was, and since I watched the old school stuff, I'm still making my way through Crystal. I don't know if they did this again, but they made him Tuxedo Mask as the villain. And I always thought it would have been better if we actually saw what I like to call the Moon Darien, which is like him in the armor and the sword and all that, just because that would have been a nice nod to what they were before. And that's all he's ever known kind of thing. But they never did that. They instead put him in Tuxedo Mask. And I'm just like, but the Tuxedo Mask gimmick doesn't work evil. It looks weird.
Yeah, because he also didn't work completely as a hero either. Just because he came in at some of the most craziest times during the fights. He was kind of like their cheerleader,
Pretty much, yeah.
At some point, he was like their cheerleader when all hope was lost.
Basically, like here's the way that, for people who don't know how that formula worked, if you've watched a Power Rangers episode, it works the exact same way. But as soon as all of the Rangers are getting caught up in the spell, then bam, Rose comes down. And he'd be like, snap out of it, Sailor Moon. Most of the time it was Moon. He never did he ever snap Amy out? I don't think he ever did. Maybe Ray a couple of times, but it was always like, snap out of it. And then all of a sudden we're back to, fisticuffs again. So that's Tuxedo Mask's role roughly in it. And yeah, he was the male cheerleader in that show.
He was.
It does actually. It makes me wonder, because again, I'm not that far into Crystal, but I know that he shows up. It would be interesting to see what they actually do with him in Crystal.
I still have to finish watching Crystal. I think I watched the majority of it, or I watched all of it, I think. Because I watched Crystal and then I didn't like the first season.
Really?
I was very not upset with it, but they took out a lot of the personalities of the different characters that everybody I knew and loved, like how they were so different from each other. So like when you and your friends were playing Sailor Moon, it was like you could say, oh, I want to be Lita because I feel like I'm the most like her. But then when it came during Crystal, it was like their personalities were all kind of like dumbed down, and it was so focused on the romance between Usagi and Momoru, when in reality it's like it's a lot more than just that. Like it's about friendship, and you miss out on the funny moments, and they kind of didn't have the bickering between Rei and Usagi at all. Like it was like they were already kind of friends a little bit. To me, that's what it seemed like, and I was like, I missed that bickering of where there was always a little bit of a rivalry of push and shove of who's more of the leader, because since she didn't see Usagi as a leader, it was like Rei seemed like the second in command that should be leader, but it was like it wasn't like that at all. And I was like, oh, it just seems kind of like they're all hunky-dory.
see, the only thing I care about in Crystal, and it's funny that you actually bring this stuff up, because your co-host Lita is actually the one that recommended that I watch Crystal. Her along with Vixian Anime and Manga Box. They're the ones who are just like, because I would see Sailor Moon Crystal seasons in my local Walmart and go, I don't know if I should get this. I'll probably be that creepy dude in the middle of the store if I pick up a Sailor Moon season at this point. And there's like, oh, no, totally. Go get it. And so I picked it up. The only thing I care about roughly is like, because Rei and Usagi interactions, I can live without. As long as they get Amy right and they get Lita right, that's really all I care about for those. Because those, look, as much as this is going to be sacrilege to some people, Usagi or Serena drove me nuts. Rei kind of did too. Rei had her moments.
Yeah.
Mina kind of drove me nuts, or I don't even know how you say her name in Crystal yet. Minako. So at that point, she was kind of on the fence with me, but those are the only ones I freaking care about. As long as they're done okay, then I'm all right.
Yeah, they were done pretty well. I'll be honest. They were done pretty well. I like that they went a little bit more into Lita's backstory. And to me, that's when I started to like it a little bit more. Was definitely more so when it got to like the second season. That's when I enjoyed it more. Okay. But it was like that first season had me for a minute. I was like, this is so different. I was like, because I also read the manga, but even the manga had a lot of like funny moments, and it was just still kind of like, even though the original wasn't completely true to the manga, because of course they did have like a filler season and stuff like that. But even when I read the manga, I was just like, oh, this is still enjoyable to read. It still brings me back a lot of nostalgia towards the original series that I watched when I was 6-7 years old. And I thought, this is how you're supposed to be when you're 13 years old.
See, for me, it was like 13 or 14 because it basically got shown on reruns on USA. That's how I came across Sailor Moon for the first time. I was actually watching, I said this in the previous episode, I was watching Sonic Sat AM, and I wanted to finish that up. And they decided one day, we're going to switch the time block. We're going to move Sat AM a half hour up, and we're going to put Sailor Moon right there for like an hour. So at that point, like I got 2 solid episodes when I was trying to get Sat AM, but it wasn't even the first episode. The second episode made me go, okay, maybe I'll watch this a little bit further. And that's eventually when I got to the Rainbow Crystals. That's when I started legitimately caring. Actually, no, never mind. Nephiite got me into it too, because he was actually a really good villain. Anyway, I need to cut this off because we actually need to get started. But first of all, before we get started, so were you able to listen to that podcast at all?
Yes, I was able to listen to it, yes.
So now you kind of get a feel for how the format's going to work. I've got a bunch of prepped questions here. We're going to go through our favorites. Basically, like if we bring up mistakes here and there, I'm not necessarily not encouraging that. But it's, for the most part, we're showing our love for Shounen anime and discussing it. So you know how that works. Really quick, I know your YouTube, I know your Twitter. Is there anything else aside from, because I've got Senshi Annie Girls already figured out, is there anything else we need to plug at the end of it so that I get all the links right?
I have my blog, which is animereviewergirl.com.
Okay, I will let me put that up on my notes really quick. animereviewergirl.com, right?
Yes.
Okay, just so that I make sure to put these plugs properly, because I did promise Lita I was going to do that. Which sadly enough, when things weren't able to work out for her to be able to come on for Magical Girl anime, I actually forgot to do. So I will actually have to edit that in when that hits the RSS feed. So here we go. If you're ready to go.
Yep, I'm ready.
Let's do it. So I'm just also recording my own audio so that I can kind of mix these two together. Sorry, you're kind of the guinea pig today because Lita was supposed to be the first one, but since this used to be a YouTube podcast, and it got approved for an RSS feed, so I moved everything over to there. This is what I'm doing now. If I have a YouTuber, I'm just going to bring them on live, and you guys get to discuss it with, and live chat before I get started. The questions that I'm asking her, you are more than welcome to give your answers to them as well, and we'll probably even read them as we go along. So at that point, things don't get too complicated, and we can at least come back to you guys from time to time. So here we go. Got to get my voiceover on really quick. Welcome, everybody, to another awesome episode of Why We Geek, the podcast where we take a piece of culture, geek culture in particular, we pick it apart, we analyze it, we show why we love it, occasionally, sometimes why we dislike it. But today, I don't think that's actually going to be happening because we're talking about yet another genre-specific anime episode here. And I've got a special guest with me as I am discussing Shounen anime today with Shay Taree. Is it Shay Taree that we actually go with? Shay Taree. So Shay Taree of she is basically one half of the Senshi Annie Girls podcast that goes on, I think it's monthly for you guys on YouTube. So unfortunately, we weren't able to bring in the other co-host last month, but we have Shay here today. Shay, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing awesome, because we're going to actually talk about a specific sect of anime that I'm not knocking my friends here and there, but there's not too many people I can actually talk about them with. And like I said, we're going to be talking shonen anime today. And before we get into the questions, I just want to do a quick description for people who don't necessarily know what that is and just love the Why We Geek podcast. And welcome. We love you guys, honestly. Shonen basically, as far as meaning goes, you know, I actually had to look this up, but shonen basically means anime for younger kids. Okay, so a lot of the anime that we're going to be bringing up are targeted towards kids, but in a lot of cases, they also can be targeted towards adults. They also have specific set tropes that can happen. In particular, there's probably some kind of a power level that can be analyzed. There's tournaments of some kind that are going to be part of those series. And shonen actually is probably one of the bigger genres in the anime scope, because there's so many anime that can be brought in and classified as such. I mean, some of the magical girl anime we brought in last month could also be classified as shonen. I mean, we were actually just doing a pre-show where we were talking about Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon technically is classified as shonen, as well as, I believe, its own distinction is shoujo. So you have those. You have Cardcaptor Sakura can also be qualified as such. I know Ray Earth doesn't fall under the qualification, but somebody was actually telling me Cutie Honey, since it's been lasting so long, technically falls also under the classification. So now that I've bored you all to death with an actual dictionary meaning, that's what I do here, people. Let's actually go ahead and get into our first question. And I always start this podcast off the same way, and that is, Shay, what is your first exposure to? I'm going to actually broaden the first one to anime, period. Okay, so like, what was your first ever exposure to anime? And then what was the anime that got you solidly as a shonen fan? Okay, so for example, I'll go ahead and answer it while you think of your answer. For me, like, my first exposure is like any kid of the 80s, Voltron. Okay, Voltron was like my first exposure, getting up at Sunday morning, waiting for Transformers to come on, and it was also coupled with this other show called Voltron, Defender of the Universe. I'm not even, I could go into the Peter Cullen dialogue. I really could, from days of long ago. Never mind. But that was my first exposure to anime and actually got me into the medium. There were other videotapes and things like that that got me hooked. What got me hooked, however, as a fan of shonen anime, at least solidly of that particular franchise, I didn't have a whole lot of exposure to things like Dragon Ball growing up. They were always on weird channels that I never got access to until when I moved up to Idaho. I got access to the weird Oceanic dub that people love to make fun of. It's the other one, aside from like the 4K or the other dub before Funimation took over, that everybody liked to make fun of. But my first exposure was actually when we finally got access to Cartoon Network, and I got to see a series by the name of Yu Yu Hakusho, aka Poltergeist Report. And I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know anything, because I came in the middle of the series, and I literally looked at it and went, this is Dragon Ball, because I knew the concept of Dragon Ball, but I didn't know all of the details. But I'm like, this is Dragon Ball, but with demons. And yet somehow it's way more compelling. So yeah, those are kind of my answers to it. Shay, what was your first exposure to anime? And then what made you a solid fan of shonen anime?
For me, my first exposure to anime was, I was 6, and I just remember every day coming home after school and I would have to watch Sailor Moon. And I remember it would come on right before Gargoyles used to come on TV.
Really?
And yes.
You had a block that had Gargoyles and Sailor Moon together. That blew my mind.
But I wasn't a huge fan of Gargoyles, but I tried to watch it. But I remember watching Sailor Moon, and I was obsessed with that show. I used to have to watch it every day after school, eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at my grandparents' house. And when they ended the first season, when they fought Queen Beryl, I actually cried watching all the Sailor Scouts die or be defeated or lose.
Let's just go with the Dragon Ball definition here. They all faded into another dimension.
Yes. And now I remember just bawling my eyes out and crying. And I was like 7 years old watching it. And that was my first exposure. And then what got me hooked though onto the shonen realm in general was Dragon Ball Z. But I originally didn't like Dragon Ball Z because my brother was obsessed with it. So he had the toys and all of the above. So then I ended up watching it with him, and it would come on at like 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning on weekdays, and we would watch it before going to school every morning. And I didn't like watching it. I was like, I want to watch something else. Why do you like this? But he loved it. So then I then became obsessed with it as well. Although I came obsessed with it later on than he did. As he was fading out of it, I was like coming into liking it. And then I really started to enjoy it a lot more when I realized it was coming on to Toonami. And that's when Toonami aired between like 5 and 7 in the evening. And I remember wanting to watch it because I wanted to see the Frieza saga, and I only wanted to see Goku become a Super Saiyan because I wanted to see Krillin die and for him to become
that is definitely a moment I would have loved to have seen on like live TV. Just to see a bunch of people react to that. I had to wait later until like renting a video and seeing it. And I'll admit, like, that took kind of the luster out of it. Is like, oh, okay, well, I can just rewind it whenever, and I can see this ascension of power that has pretty much defined that series. Like, from there on in, there has to be another startling transformation. I mean, they just barely ended the Tournament of Power, didn't they? Yeah, so they just barely ended that saga. It had to end with a transformation. So that's something that's literally defined their genre there. But I especially love the story that you had there is like you had to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with your Sailor Moon. It's like, Grandpa, you ruined my afternoon.
Oh, I used to hate if they like had to run errands because I think Sailor Moon would come on like 3:30 or 4. And this was, of course, before kids, there was like DVRs and able to record your show so you could watch it later. It was like, if you missed it, you missed it. And I used to hate if my grandparents were like, oh, I have to run an errand before we go home. And I was like, no, I'm going to miss my Sailor Moon. I was like, I'm so upset.
You're Darth Vader in episode 3. No.
Yes. And then I remember buying like the videotapes for it. And this was when Blockbuster was still around. And I remember buying the Sailor Moon Promise of the Rose on VHS, and then buying the Sailor Moon the movie S on VHS, and then so on and so forth. And then my brother, of course, had Dragon Ball Z videos that he bought, the history of Trunks, Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan, and us watching it, you know, with my dad, and my dad not understanding Dragon Ball Z at all. He's like, all I hear is screaming half the time, and I don't understand what you're watching.
Yeah, my dad was kind of there too. Like he knew enough that my dad would literally look at anime and just go, he literally would say this, it's lazy animation. And the only reason that he would say that is because he was used to Disney, you know, like Disney would do continuous cell animation, whereas anime was always trying to find those ways to cut the budget kind of thing. So, you know, his example always would be like Speed Racer. And look, I'm not necessarily saying he's wrong. I mean, Speed Racer is just kind of hokey, but at the same time, you know, this is what they did as cost-cutting measures to not have to animate every single thing. But yeah, so we have the first thing that got you into it was Sailor Moon, and then you said the thing that kept you into Shonen was Dragon Ball. So at that point, that's an interesting switch there, because like you said, your brother was the Dragon Ball Z fan, and then eventually you just kind of came into your own on that. I guess the additional question I've got to ask is, so has that continued on? Have you been watching Super and all of that?
I remember at one point I was watching when DBZ Kai came out. I was watching that for a little bit before that got canceled and before that was no longer a thing. I haven't watched Dragon Ball Z Super yet. I think I'm waiting because of the fact that I'm so used to like watching Dragon Ball Z dubbed that I haven't watched it subbed. So that for me was like, I have to wait. But my boyfriend loves watching Dragon Ball Z Super, so he's been watching it. So he's just like, you have to watch this. I'm like, I haven't seen any of it.
I'll admit, I have not spoiled I've seen pieces of the Tournament of Power. Like I poked in at episode 109, 110 to see Ultra Instinct like anybody else did, but I'm literally not spoiling anything else in that Tournament of Power because I'm so used to the Funimation dub at this point. I need to hear it from them. I need to hear Chris Sabat as Vegeta. Otherwise, it sounds so weird to hear the Japanese voice now.
Yeah, like, for me, there's a lot of shows I'm like that with.
Yeah, like there are very few times where I will sacrifice enough to go and watch the sub of a particular anime. In particular, like when a new Gundam series comes out, I'll watch that because I can wait for a dub on that. And then Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. That was so good. I couldn't wait. And I actually did watch that subbed. So that was another thing too.
The only other show that I remember I waited, but I had to wait for it to be dubbed, and I tried it subtitled, but I just couldn't do it, was Inuyasha. I watched it when Final Act came out, and everyone was just like, oh, Final Act is finally out. And I was like, oh my God, they're going to have an ending. Okay, I'll watch it subbed. And then they showed Sesshomaru and he talked, and I was like, I can't do it. I got to wait for the dub. And I ended up waiting for the dub, and I didn't care. If you were like, just watch it subbed, I was like, I can't. It sounds so different.
I heard the sub of Final Act, and I was so disappointed in it that this is actually how I coaxed my then like we had just barely gotten married wife to come and watch the previous seasons of Inuyasha with me, just so that we could wait out the dub for Final Act. And then finally I was able to see Final Act dubbed. Okay, so we have these questions in particular. So basically, these are the absolute favorites that we have. The next question that I need to get into, because everybody loves to have this discussion about Shonen, and that is always, it comes to the protagonists. Now, the protagonists always kind of have that default, they have to have this trait in their personality. They have to always want to fight, things like that. You know, the best way to look at it, if you're not a fan of Shonen, look at Goku in Dragon Ball Z. He's kind of the template for a Shonen protagonist. And so at that point, I mean, there are deviations here and there, but let's go ahead and go there. Who is your favorite Shonen protagonist? Because here's the thing, you can love Dragon Ball Z, but if you talk to a lot of fans, Goku's not their favorite. Like, I know a lot of people who are of the camp that when the Buu saga happened, Goku should never have been shown. It should have totally been around Gohan. And I do know like a bunch of other people who will go, well, Dragon Ball Z is great, but its protagonist really sucks. So who is your favorite Shonen protagonist?
My favorite Shonen protagonist, I kind of want to go with Yusuke from Yu Yu Hakusho. It's kind of one of my favorites because while he loved to fight, he wasn't the all-around nice guy either. Like he was bad. Like he was a juvenile delinquent, and they showed that from the very beginning of the series. He was still a very likable character, but he kind of had that Vegeta-esque essence about him because Vegeta was my favorite character in Dragon Ball Z, even though he's the bad guy. Like he's my favorite. Yeah. But that's how Yusuke was for me. It's like you can't. He's supposed to be bad, but you're like, I like him. Like I like that he's rough around the edges.
See, for me with Vegeta, it was always the fact that he was a really good redemption story because, you know, my story to Z is like, I knew stuff about it and I saw stuff later, but my first official exposure into it was the Buu saga. Yes. The dreaded Buu saga that everybody hates. Like everybody goes, Cell Saga, greatest thing ever that happened in DBZ. And then I say, well, I started the Buu saga. You're like, boo, you started at the worst possible place. But that's when Vegeta actually becomes like a legit redemption story. So at that point, that's why I love Vegeta as a character. So I could totally relate with you on that. And I'm also just very proud because I didn't actually bring up Yusuke. You brought him up. So that means I can talk about him. Yeah, actually, here's the thing. One of my favorite Shonen protagonists has always been Yusuke Urameshi. And the only reason that he is because he is such a departure from the Shonen protagonist. He is such an anti-Goku. He is a delinquent. You're not supposed to like him. In fact, most fans that I talked to about Yu Yu Hakusho when they watched it the first time, they didn't like him. They didn't like Yusuke. They didn't like Kuwabara. They either drifted to Kurama or Hiei. And for different reasons. Like if they wanted that smart character, they loved Kurama. And if they were into Vegeta-esque characters, strangely enough, they were into Hiei. So like they would always love that character first, but then they get to that second playthrough of Yu Yu Hakusho and go, holy crap, Yusuke is actually a really cool and interesting take on the shonen protagonist because he's not likable. He's not even trying to be likable, but he has all of the traits there. People still tend to want to fight him again. They want to be able to be part of his life. And that's why in a lot of cases I love Yu Yu Hakusho because it's not just, you know, we're telling the saga of Goku having to deal with this threat that's coming from beyond the stars. Instead, it's because I think Yu Yu Hakusho starts up and they're 12, 13 or 14, one of that age. And then it ends at them being 17. And so at that point they're on the cusp of being an adult. And so you literally get to see Yusuke grow up from episode 1 till the end.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's actually an honest to gosh saga that you can watch, like him as he develops through the various cases that he's taken on. And even, you know, as much as people want to make fun of the Demon World Tournament saga, which is, even I'll admit, it's not the greatest thing that's been written into that show. But as far as Yusuke development, it actually is really the best there. Like this is where he starts to become a full-on adult, and he becomes the likable character that we all appreciate. The other one that I'll also throw out here, and maybe you'll agree with me with this, maybe not, but if we're actually following the rules of a legit shonen protagonist, because again, Yusuke's a departure. If we're following a legit shonen protagonist, I'm going to get so much flack for this, but I'm going to say Naruto Uzumaki from Shippuden. And the only reason that I'm going to do that is because I've literally had this discussion with people. He is Goku done right. Like when you look at Goku, it's funny that Super like actually takes the thing we were all concerned about with Goku and actually brings it in as a legit problem. Okay. Is that he has to fight the next big guy, and it's always been a problem, and we've never acknowledged it. But with Naruto, they take that exact same foil and then just say, okay, well, we don't want to do just he enjoys fighting for the sake of fighting. We also want to make him like a legit protector. And as much as we all want to make fun of the whole, what is it they call it? Talk no jutsu, that is his power and his power alone. Talk no jutsu, like for as much as we want to make fun of that, it's what makes Naruto very relatable to a lot of people, because he doesn't just look at his enemy. He understands where they're at, because a lot of the enemies that he's dealing with are very much like himself and what he had to deal with. The only difference is he had Iruka, he had numerous other things to pull him away from the dark side. And, you know, he could have just become a guy who wanted to destroy the world like anybody else. But instead he had that support circle that came in near the later end that helped him to be able to understand all of these villains, but at the same time want to end their tyranny, want to save the day kind of thing. So I will always appreciate Naruto Uzumaki for being a proper foil of a shonen protagonist.
Yeah. I also agree with you on that one, because Naruto was also very likable, whereas a lot of people for Goku was always like you said, like a love-hate. Like people liked him because he was the protagonist, but then he had some major issues with his own character that made people kind of dislike him. But with Naruto, since he always had that underlying like of him being alone, of him being isolated, and you know his backstory, that made him so much more likable, because he had a problem, but he's also trying to overcome that own issue. And you see him not letting the fact that he has been isolated by the villagers of the Leaf Village not basically bring him down. Because I remember watching his his backstory when they do like a whole flashback episode, and they show like how he was treated and everything else. That's from him being a little kid. And I remember like watching that episode with like tears in my eyes, and like, man, like I really enjoy Naruto as a character. Like even though he's a protagonist, and yeah, he's gonna be powering up and fighting everybody, but since he has this deep rooted, you know, backstory that so many people can probably relate to in different parts of their life, if they'd ever felt isolated or alone or anything like that, that they can see that and be like, okay, I deeply understand this character.
Well, and one of the things that actually was really cool about Naruto is, this is another trait of shonen, is you get a bunch of flashback episodes to bring people up to speed, but his was one of those few cases where I didn't mind it, because every time they did it, they always had a new element to be able to add. So like his relationship with Sasuke, his relationship with Iruka. One of my particular favorites is when he eventually gets to meet his father and his mother through the various vision quests or whatever he's doing, to be able to have that, because he gets their history, but then he also gets to have the praise that we all like are in tears going, he deserves this so much. That he's so much more than what his father was in his day. He is so much more than what his mother was in her day. And you get to see like why in Boruto he is, I'm not going to say worshipped as a god, but basically the one thing that ties the entire ninja world together kind of thing, because their love of Naruto is what actually helps things remain as peaceful as they are in now Boruto instead of Naruto. And actually, what's funny is our chat is actually agreeing with us. Naruto beats DBZ. So we actually have Art of Anime, one of our people in the chat, telling us that even vanilla Naruto beats DBZ Goku, in my opinion. But I like vanilla Goku over... You like vanilla Goku over vanilla Naruto. And I would technically agree with you on that, because he's still kind of a whiny kid. But Shippuden is actually what fills him out, in my opinion. That's the funniest thing is, like, there are a few exceptions where I say original Naruto did characters better than Shippuden. And for example, one of mine is Rock Lee. Rock Lee was actually really cool to watch progress in regular Naruto, and I actually got disappointed that Shippuden didn't focus on him as much.
Yeah.
I mean, for crying out loud, he got the DBZ fight. All right. We all can at least give this credit. He got the DBZ fight in Naruto.
He did.
And by the way, that was the most badass fight ever in Naruto. All right. So that's the example of shonen protagonists. I have to go to the opposite. So who is your favorite shonen villain? So the antagonist that you actually have to deal with. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, we're not saying you have to couple Sasuke with Naruto. Okay. You don't have to do that because here's the thing. Some people like Sasuke. I'm not in that spectrum. I have problems with him, but there are great villains literally strewn throughout shonen that, whether they be subtle manipulators, whether they be, outright just evil people, they are amazing threats to actually see happen. And actually this one I'm going to, since it's shonen is so big, I'm going to expand it on it. If you want to do like a top 3 shonen villains, you're more than welcome to. But I guess I'll go ahead and start so you can kind of think of some. The 3 that come to mind for me are obviously Vegeta. Vegeta is still like a very awesome villain. Even in the Cell games, he is still very villainous. And so at that point, even all of his villainous actions, just they make you hate him, but they make you love to hate him. Because in some weird way, he's right. Like, you have to abolish this threat here and now. And he's just the only one who's willing to do the job. The second one I have to give credit to is the guy who defined Yu Yu Hakusho, and that is Shinobu Sensui. Eventually, that Chapter Black arc, he is, I've seen some people debate, like, who is better, Toguro or Sensui? They don't bring up Demon World Tournament because there technically really isn't even a villain there. I mean, Yomi counts, but not really. But Sensui, there were so many layers to that character. Even when you didn't know anything about him, it made you thirst for more information. And when you thought you were done, they'd throw you a left hook and you'd be like, oh, I totally love this concept. For example, one of my favorite moments is the emergence of his multiple personalities. So we didn't know this up until this point. We thought we were dealing with just the legit Shinobu. And then all of a sudden, his hand turns into a gun, Yusuke's shot, and he is acting 100% differently than he was before. And then you learn that there's not just one multiple personality within him, there's 7 of them. You don't even meet all 7, but you almost want to meet all 7 just to see how different they all are. So I'll bring up Shinobu Sensui as also another really great shonen protagonist or antagonist. And then the other one that I have to bring up is, I'm going to give you Naruto guys a little bit of a heads up, because even I will admit that in Shippuden, the build up to Madara Uchiha was pretty freaking amazing. And it got ultimate payoff. I mean, you're not supposed to be cheering for him, but when he comes out and he kicks the crap out of thousands and thousands of ninja, it's damn satisfying to watch. It really is. And then just every time your heroes would pull out something to help out with the struggle, and then he'd pull something out, it just got better and better and better. I really wish Madara had shown up so much earlier in the series than he did, but he was a great climax to, well, not overall climax because eventually Kaguya happened, but he was actually a really great final protagonist for the ninja world, not just Naruto, but the ninja world to take on. So who would you consider to be your 3 best shonen antagonists?
So one of them is actually from, I don't know if it counts as like one or if it's as a whole, but I kind of want to go with the generation of miracles in Kuroko's basketball.
Okay.
Just because basically the senior team had to each battle a different Generations of Miracles player during the tournament. So it was fun to see them get up to the final one, which was, I believe his name is Akashi. And because you hear so much about him, you don't even meet him until about the third season-ish. I believe the third season when you finally meet him. But you hear so much about him and how he basically was the glue that held them all together when they played together in middle school. So when you finally meet this player and you hear like how like badass of a player he is, that you're like, man, they have their work cut out for them. But you're like kind of like, I want to see what he has. Like I kind of want to see what he's got. But you're kind of like, I want to hate this character, but I kind of don't, because I kind of think he's actually really, really cool. So I want to go with him, and kind of also Generation Miracles as a whole, because they were all like phenomenal to watch. Because I mean, I like basketball, so for me it was just watching them do their moves, even though they're like not real moves that none of us can probably pull off.
That's the funniest thing about the sports anime, that they're literally doing stuff that defies physics.
Yes, absolutely. But just watching them, and then you're just like, oh, like I want to hate these characters, but I want to hate them because they're going after the main team, but you can't, because you're like, but that's a really cool move. Like I love it.
And in some cases, that's what makes an ultimate villain. You love to hate them. You want to see, like, for as much as you want to see your hero triumph, you want to see what left hook they're going to pull out of their pouch next, and see what they can actually do. I'll let that technically count as one. I mean, if because the justification you've made is that it is one together. Yeah. So who else would you put up there?
I also would put, of course, I have to go with you on this one, Vegeta, because
yes,
I mean he's like the ultimate antagonist that you love so much, and you're like supposed to hate him, but you're like, I can't hate you because you're cool. Like you're amazing.
Like I know a lot of people who have legit love for Frieza as a villain, because I mean he is just a downright despicable person. But even I kind of look at Frieza and go, well, this shtick kind of gets old. Vegeta never really did. Yeah. Even when he was pulling out brand spanking new moves, it was a whole new a whole new game for Vegeta. So where I could honestly say like Cell's shtick kind of gets old after a while, Frieza's shtick kind of does. Vegeta's never really did.
Yeah,
it just kept getting way more villainous, which is funny now because he's like 100% swerved in Super. He's like the ultra good guy now.
Yeah.
All right.
I think for my last one, some people might disagree with me, because in reality, I don't see this. I see this character as both a protagonist and an antagonist in a lot of ways. And I kind of want to go with Light Yagami in Death Note, because he was a protagonist, but he's also kind of the antagonist, because you grow to hate him, because you grow to hate what he's doing sometimes. But he's also one of the main characters of the series. And you start to see, while L is kind of brought in as an antagonist, you start to see him as a protagonist because he's trying to defeat Light. But you also love to hate Light in a lot of ways, because you're like, I understand what he's doing, but he's going about it the wrong way. But you're also in another way, you like him because he is so smart and he's doing everything in a way that you're like, I want to see how he's going to get out of this next. Is he gonna somehow defeat L? Is he gonna somehow work around it? And
that's technically what held that series together, is Light versus L. I mean, as much as I'm in the camp with a lot of people where, like, when L died, spoiler, he dies.
Yeah.
When L died, I lost interest because what was it? Mello and Nier, they never met up to L. They never had his standard.
Agree with you. Yeah. I have to agree with you on that one, because L was just like everything, and he was, even though he's like the person that's investigating, he was also such a weird character in general, from how he sat to how he liked sweets. He was creepy, but he was also like amazing all in one instance. And he was also very smart. So seeing him and Light going against each other, but also on the same team in a lot of instances, because they started working together, even though L was like, I know something's up with Light, but he couldn't, once he figured it out, but that was the end, once he figured out what was actually going on. But even just to see that battle of intelligence between the both of them, because L was very intelligent, but Light was also intelligent. And for Light to be a high schooler and L to be like a grown adult was like, who's gonna win in this battle of wills. And while ultimately, Light ultimately won, Light also ultimately at the end of things lost.
And here's the thing, as much as I hated Mello and Near, that last episode where we got the final reveal and everybody got to see Light for who he was, it was damn satisfying. Okay. So like, will I admit that the arc going to that point was equally satisfying? No, it wasn't. Yeah. In fact, they could have literally taken those 10 or so episodes out and I would have been okay with it. But you came because I was never in the point where I liked Light. Okay, I knew I knew what he was. As soon as he said, "I will become a god of this new world," I knew where he stood, and so I was really waiting for his villain to step up, which was L. And yeah, everybody agrees on that. Is like in some cases I've seen debate where you can't even consider Light to be the protagonist. This is like the one anime where you follow the antagonist instead of the protagonist. So at that point, you have that swerve where antagonist is now hero kind of thing. And I get why they did that, because you have to go through that journey of just hating when Light would get that one little detail, that one little one up on L. And that's what kept things going, is the paranoia and the rivalry that eventually came between the two of them. I've even heard people, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with this, a lot of people comparing Light and L to Guts, and I'm not remembering his rival in Berserk, but like that kind of a rivalry between them. I want to say Godfrey, but I don't think that's right. But yeah, comparing that, because you also had like the weird hintings in Berserk of bromance between the two of them. The same thing happened here with L and Light. I mean, seriously, I've seen Griffith. Thank you. So somebody in our live chat actually got it. So Guts and Griffith. So you had that weird bromance between the two of them. In fact, the episode where L dies is like a really weird one to watch, because all of a sudden you see L being like extremely compassionate towards who you know to be an absolute dick. Yeah. So like seeing him do the foot rub and all, it's like, oh no, L, you've got to catch him, kind of thing.
Yes. That was the first time I actually remember like watching that episode and seeing Elle die and going, no, like, oh my God, like what's going to happen next? Because once again, I think for me, I think I was one of the few people that at one point liked what Light was doing, because he hadn't done the whole, like, I'm going to be God of the new world now. It was kind of like, okay, you're getting rid of all the people that are bad. I'm okay with that. But then once he started getting a little crazy with it and talking about God and New World, I was like, okay, yeah, you've gone to deep end. And like I tell people a lot of times is that Light was a great example of what can happen when a person gets way too much power and then they become corrupt, because he started out doing good, but then he got that power of the Death Note and seeing what it can all do and how it can all change. And he's just like, I'm gonna just write off whoever I want. And I was like, great example.
He may have been like a really great guy as a high school student, but then when you handed him the proverbial Armageddon spell, the history eraser button, you just see how mad with power he gets and how quickly that actually can happen. Yeah. So that's actually a really good comparison that we got there. But I think we could also both agree that Death Note also provided us with one of the most silly villains ever. And I'm going to give that to Teru Mikami, because it was absolutely satisfying to see him just go, delete, delete, delete. And then we'd even have like the shonen movements of him, delete right off, or doing like ballerina spins while he was killing people off. Oh my gosh, that is so freaking satisfying to watch. Yeah. Like it almost makes sitting through Mellow and Near worth it. So
even the potato chip scene was one of my favorites too. When he had the TV in the potato chip bag, and he was like, I'll take this potato chip and I'll eat it. And I was like, oh my God, I can't.
Take a potato chip and eat it. Yeah, dude, even I kind of sat there and went, that is the hammiest line read. But man, that was satisfying to listen to Amuro Ray say it, because it's the same guy. So yeah, the funniest thing is like the guy who played Light Yagami eventually went on, like he's done so many Gundam series for them for Sunrise. So like I'm sitting there going, dude, I am literally hearing Setsuna F. Seiei and Kachiro Rababa Winner and Amuro Ray all talking about potato chips and eating it. That is the weirdest thing ever. Yes. And I even love the voice actor for L, who actually the only credit he had before then was he was on Battlestar Galactica, the sci-fi reboot. So, all right, we've talked about the best. We've talked about the absolute worst villains that we can possibly discuss here. The next thing that we need to get into, and it's not necessarily a criticism because it can go either way, but it is something with Shounen that we have to address, and that is the filler arcs.
Oh,
and so this is going to be kind of a two-pronged question. What the first being, sorry, you're moving your laptop. That's actually like, okay.
I'm sorry, I was using my laptop charger.
No, it's all right. So at that point, the first question is, what is your overall viewpoint on a filler arc? Like, you know, do you think that they're necessary for a shonen series, or do you think that there are good or bad ones, kind of thing? And then the next question is basically, if you have a best filler arc, you could go ahead and mention it, and a worst filler arc. My opinion on filler arcs is, look, there's actually something. I can get why a lot of people don't like filler. Okay, because when you're like 250 episodes into an anime and you're very invested in the plot line that it's trying to tell you, the fact that you have to realize that, yeah, a mangaka hasn't necessarily finished out that arc, and so they have to buy time for him to do so. So you can understand that particular aspect. It's still frustrating. So I will agree with a lot of people that it is frustrating, but filler has been done well in shonen series. There are very few examples that I can actually make, but basically the filler arcs that do make it, that are worth it, are the ones that are treated as technical canon. Especially if they try to give you a character development arc with a character that wouldn't necessarily get a whole lot of development. You know, the best example, and this is actually one of my worst, is there's actually a couple of really good Naruto arcs where they do development on, say, Sakura or Hinata or Rock Lee. And they actually are really cool development-wise for those characters. But then when they're non-canonical and they're never mentioned again, it's like, oh, well, that's kind of pointless. That's kind of dumb. And that's like my only beef with filler arcs is you can do them. I have no problem with it, but you gotta make them canon. Otherwise, the characters are overall hurt by it. Even your main characters can be hurt by it. What's your take on filler arcs?
I don't mind filler arcs if, kind of like you, they kind of become canon, or if you don't recognize them as being filler arcs. I don't like the filler arcs that all of a sudden the characters are on this strange journey, and then you're like, wait, I'm so confused. What was the point of this? Those are the ones I hate and I do not like. Yeah.
Or they try to introduce whole new threats that never show up again. Like the one that I bring up with a lot of people is in Bleach, where they made their version of vampires, roughly. That's
actually my worst.
Yeah,
that's my worst one. I hated the bounce arc. It made no sense. And then they gave what's his name, Uryu, a love interest, kind of. He fell in love with someone or liked someone, and you never hear about her again.
Yeah, because you went right back into the Arankar arc, and she was gone.
Yes. I think for me though, I gotta say, if it's okay with me to say my favorite filler arc, I have to go with Fullmetal Alchemist. That's probably my favorite, because when they came out with Brotherhood, everyone was like, oh, it's going to be following the manga.
Oh, so you're talking like the 2003 series.
Yeah, because I never realized, because of the fact that people say it's deviated so much from the original source material. You never would have known unless you had actually, since I had not read the Fullmetal Alchemist manga, they did it very, very well. And from a lot of people whom I know who have read it and then who have watched the 2003 series, they still really, really like it, because they know that there wasn't really any more source material for them to go based off of. And they just went along with it, but it still came out really, really well. And then when I watched Brotherhood and I saw that it did follow the original manga and the original source material, I still really enjoyed it. And yes, there were some characters that weren't there anymore, but I recognized that, because I was like, okay, they weren't in the manga, so I know that they're not going to be in this series. But that was probably my favorite. I gotta probably give it up to that one, because
you know what,
good.
given the argument that you've given, I completely agree with you, because I like both the 2003 FMA as well as Brotherhood. I like Brotherhood a little bit more. And the main reason I do is because some of the homunculi and some of the other character decisions that were done so much better in Brotherhood, in my opinion. I mean, for crying out loud, I finally got Ed and Winry getting together, which never happened in 03. That was stupid, by the way.
Everyone wanted that.
I wish I could have done an awkward proposal to get married like Ed did. Equivalent exchange. I will give half my life and you will give half of yours.
Yes.
Yeah, that is definitely going to get you married, guys. But I'm appreciative that they did that. But there were actually a lot of things done really well in the 2003 Full Metal Alchemist that I have to at least give credit for. In particular, Hohenheim. I felt Hohenheim had so much more actual development in the brief amount of time he had in 2003 compared to Brotherhood, which basically focused on, well, the evil Hohenheim, the ultimate homunculus, which looked like him. But the actual Hohenheim got very little development in Brotherhood. So I like the fact that we got that. I actually did like the concept of the 2003 Wrath. Where basically we found out what happened to Ed and Al's legs and arm, or what was it? Ed's arm and leg were both on Wrath, and also partially because of Al's body. So at that point, you got a really cool character out of that, even though I also do like the fact that the Fuhrer in Brotherhood is Wrath in that. And instead they have a whole new Pride, and that Pride works a little bit better than the Fuhrer. So given your argument, I actually agree. Like 03 is a really good filler arc while they filled out Full Metal Alchemist and then eventually did Brotherhood. And Brotherhood is the superior deal. Although I will give props to Conqueror of Shambhala. It's like one of the few anime movies that I still can watch every now and then.
Yeah. They gave everybody what they wanted without putting the show on a hiatus, which is what I think a lot of people don't always like, is when a show just stops because there's no more source materials. That's why people come out with filler arcs. But instead of them doing that, which is very similar to like Naruto did, because they went on like a hiatus and then they came out with Shippuden once they had more source material, which a lot of people did like, but Naruto still did have fillers in between in both Naruto, the original one, and both in Shippuden.
Well, and I also think that the transition was very helpful, not just for the mangaka, but also for the audience, is that eventually, you know, yes, this is a kid's anime, and I'm not necessarily faulting it for that, but when your side characters are more liked than your main characters in there, you obviously need to kind of look at the drawing board a little bit and refigure out, like, how am I going to get people to like Naruto? Shippuden is amazing in so many regards to these characters, because it actually takes stuff you absolutely hated about them in the original and fixes them by basically saying they grew up. And it makes sense for them to do so. Naruto's a much better character in Shippuden compared to his original. And, you know, in his original form, he's just a comic relief kind of protagonist. He's very much like a Monkey D. Luffy or a Goku.
Also helps seeing a character grow up.
Yeah,
because I think that's where a lot of people find the dilemma with Pokemon, is that you never see Ash actually grow up. He stays 10, and everyone's like, he's over 10 years old by now. We want to see him grow up.
Instead of seeing him grown up, you just see him grown more derpy.
Exactly. You're just like, he's still 10.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm one of those people that is very much against the new animation style for Pokemon. Like, I don't have a problem with Ash. If they want to keep him 10 years old, that's fine. I don't have to watch. But when they did that whole Sun and Moon transition, I'm just like, well, he didn't grow up. He just grew more derpy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they did.
And also just, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to put Misty and Brock with him again. No reason. We're just going to do it. Gee, I almost wonder, like, if they're trying to recreate the first season. Maybe you should have just ended things. I know people don't want them to actually end. Like there are literally people out there, I've met them, that want, like, for every new game that comes out to be a season of Pokemon that covers it. I'm just like, well, guys, but the show's been going on for so many years, and it's
been over 20 years. Like, it's been out. At least they said almost like 20 years. This show has been out.
there's only so many times that you can take an episode that you did in Indigo and bring it back in Johto and bring it back in Hoenn, and if for it to still remain relevant. I mean, there'll be new kids that'll watch it, but for somebody who's been watching, like my wife, who's been watching from episode 1 and consistently watches, where she's seen that story arc before and she knows what it is, and she could literally go back and watch the first episode that she saw it in and be okay with it. It's been going for 20 years. Eventually a series has to end. You know, it's one of those things where I still have that argument, like The Simpsons will never die. Yes, it will. Yes, it will eventually. All right. And so we're actually running out of time here, but I do have one additional question that I want to get to. And that is, this is something that I've actually seen in your vlogs. You handle quite a bit. And I've dealt with it a number of times in my life and when we're going to theme it around shonen. So at that point, like if somebody actually came to you today, like a friend of yours just said, you know, I've been looking to get into this whole anime thing and I would love to try this shonen stuff out with you. What is like the one series you'd recommend to anybody who's walking in like unaffected by any form of anime? Like this has to be the gateway drug of shonen anime.
Ooh,
it's actually kind of hard because for me,
it's hard.
All the ones that I've ever recommended, like Cowboy Bebop worked, but Cowboy Bebop is shonen. So,
right. Like for me, I always go based off of who it is that's mostly asking me and like based off of what their personality is. So like with my friends, I've recommended like Ouran High School Host Club or like Peach Girl and stuff like that. But it's like a shonen, man, I probably would have to go with probably like Full Metal Alchemist or maybe even Death Note, just because since a lot of people I know who know anything about anime always deviate to like the 90s anime that we watched as kids. So they always deviate to like Pokemon, Sailor Moon, and also of course DBZ. So I would have to give them something that's a little bit more like darker, while it still has some comedic aspects, like how Full Metal Alchemist has some comedy in it with Ed saying, I'm not short, and everything else. But I also want to show them that anime has a lot deeper than that, like as far as the storylines are concerned. So I'd probably have to go with something like that. And I wouldn't recommend a super long series like Naruto because of the fact it is so daunting because of how many episodes it is. So I'd be like...
That's like trying to tell somebody to start from issue 1 of Batman.
Right.
That's not going to work.
No. And I feel like if I did give them a longer series to watch, it would probably be Inuyasha, because while it is long, it does have a lot of different aspects in it. It has the shonen, but it also has the romance with Kagome and Inuyasha, and you're talking about like, just get together already. And then you have Kikyo, and then you have the funny with Moroku and Sango, and so that has a lot of different aspects to it too if they want a longer series. But if they want something a little bit short, probably Death Note, because it is kind of dark, but it's also like keeps you on the edge of their seat. A funny story is I actually got my dad to watch the Death Note live action, not the one on Netflix that everyone's thinking of. I actually bought
somebody actually watched that one.
I actually did watch the one on Netflix. Oh my god. I actually ended up buying the Death Note live action that they did in Japan, and then was dubbed by the original voice actors. And I actually had my dad watch it because I told my dad a lot about the show, and my dad found it very interesting. So we found the live action, and I had him watch it, and he actually enjoyed it. And so I was pleasantly surprised. So I was just like, all right, he enjoyed it. I was like, that's good.
Yeah, as we pointed out in the beginning of the podcast, my dad has always been he was very anti-anime for a long time, until I was actually able to get, this isn't a shown example, but I got a series by the name of Witch Hunter Robin. It had been shown on Adult Swim here and there, and as soon as I got it on DVD, like I was binge watching it, and he watched it with me. And it's the only time I ever got him to actually sit down and watch anime with me, and he didn't complain. And the only reason that he liked it was because it reminded him so much of the X-Files for some weird reason. So, and he was a big fan of the X-Files. So at that point, like that's the one anime that I was able to get him into. Eventually we branched into, I think we finished the 2003 Full Metal Alchemist before he wouldn't watch anymore. But yeah, this is definitely a hard one. I agree with you that it needs to be a short arc. So like Death Note, where it's like 26 episodes is where you need to go. Yeah, if you try with like Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, there's too much there for somebody to digest. And if you're trying to get somebody just brand spanking new into it, a show with like 500 episodes isn't really going to do the job. One I would probably recommend it. I don't know if this would technically count as shonen, but I'm just going to bounce it out to the chat and see what you guys think. Outlaw Star, because it's probably like, I know the comparisons to Cowboy Bebop, and yeah, there are some subtle comparisons that you can do, but I think that there's enough of the whimsy and adventure of shonen in Outlaw Star that, and it's short enough that you could probably get other people into it. But as you kind of brought up, it depends on personality. It depends on so much stuff that it becomes a real difficult question to answer, because in some cases, that 500 episode arc is the only thing that's ever going to work for them. You know, I would love to recommend Yu Yu Hakusho to people. It's 120 episodes. That's not going to work. Yeah. So I guess my answer right off the bat would, I think Death Note also works because it, you know, if you look at modern day TV today, like Walking Dead and all that stuff, it's dark enough and it's got your brain percolating enough that enough people are going to love it. But I also think if you're going to go for the whimsy and adventure, I think Outlaw Star kind of fills that out for a lot of people. Or Trigun. Trigun would do it too.
I was just thinking that because I was like just thinking of Trigun because it has that whimsy feel. And you also, of course, have Vash, who's hilarious, but can also be a badass when it comes down to it. But he's also very comedic. Yeah. So it kind of fulfills both those aspects. But just like what you said, when it comes down to personality, like another example with my dad is I got my dad to actually sit down and watch. It's not a shonen by any means at all, but he sat down and watched it with me, and it was Crayon Shin-chan. He sat there and watched all 3 seasons with me.
Really?
And I think because of the fact it has that like South Park, Simpsons, Family Guy-esque kind of all balled into one. He loved it.
And he found it hilarious. Stuff,
yeah, so he found it really funny. Whereas for like my mom, it definitely wouldn't be Shin-chan. It would probably be something like, you know, she knows a lot about Sailor Moon, so it probably would be like Sailor Moon or maybe even like Peach Girl or something that has a lot more drama involved in it or something. But my dad, he was watching that with me. He's seen a couple of episodes of Bleach also with me, just because he's seeing he heard the whole, you bastard, and I'm just like, he's like, what is this? And I'm just like, oh, it's Bleach. He watched it with me. But Shin-chan took it home. Shin-chan, he was sitting down watching every episode with me, and he found it hilarious. But very funny.
You know what? If he liked South Park, if he liked Simpsons, then Shin-chan would work. Whereas my dad watched a couple of things of Shin-chan and what was the other one that was paired with it on Adult Swim for a while? Super Milk-chan, I think is what it was called. And those two drove him nuts. and he liked The Simpsons, but barely. So like occasionally they'd make that one joke that he laughed at. So like the perfect example is I can't remember. It's the one where Homer goes into space. That's probably the first full episode my dad ever liked. Okay, because it had a bunch of engineering elements and jokes there that he just loved. But then he watched Shin-chan. He's like, "What the frick is this?"
No, my dad watched all those shows with my brother and I. We probably weren't supposed to watch them, but we watched The Simpsons, Family Guy, Futurama. I mean, my dad even bought my brother and I the South Park movie when it came out, and my mom was very upset because she was just like, "Why did you buy them this movie?" And then he even took Beavis and Butthead. That we used to watch that too.
Really? Wow. Okay. Yeah. so at that point, I have to ask this now because, you know, we brought all these up. Has your dad ever seen Fooly Cooly?
No, he hasn't.
Oh, you need to introduce, especially with that new season coming up. I'd almost be interested to see what your dad thought of Fooly Cooly. Like, if he loves the outlandish crap that can happen sometimes in those shows, think what Fooly Cooly's going to do to his brain. Have you ever seen Fooly Cooly?
I have not. It's sad.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. This is like one of those points where I actually want to sit in that living room and just see it blow both your minds.
It's just kind of interesting because my dad and I are both on just a broad spectrum of what we like to watch in general. So my dad even bought which one is it? I know it's the samurai anime.
Shampoo?
No, the other one. I think he's voiced by Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, Afro Samurai.
Yes, Afro Samurai. My dad bought it, and he has it, and he's watched it, and he thoroughly enjoyed it. As far as I know of, he's bought Battle Royale because I kind of forced him to buy it because I was just like, it's really good. So he's on a broad spectrum, so he'll probably enjoy it also. I mean, I even want to show him Kuroko's basketball because I'm like, you need to see this because you like basketball. I like basketball. I think you might kind of enjoy it.
Another one that I would actually be very interested in, and the chat is actually giving us a lot of really good ideas. We'll get to that in a second. But another one that I'd be interested in, because you did a review for it, is Food Wars, just to see what he'd actually do with it.
I'm concerned about Food Wars because it does have that aspect of when people try food that makes everyone feel mildly uncomfortable.
Yes. In fact, it's because of those foodgasms. So like my sister was very hardcore for a while, like when she was trying to teach herself to cook, into watching the classic Japanese Iron Chef. Mm-hmm. So not the new one, because that wasn't out yet, but like she would watch the classic Japanese Iron Chef and she loved it. And so when I actually came across Food Wars for the first time, I'm like, you have to see this. And I sat her down and had her watch like the first couple of episodes. She's not that big into anime, like where she'll buy it, but she was like sitting there going, can I borrow your DVDs when you actually get it? This is really funny. It's like, yeah, you most certainly can, because it's so stupid. And actually, yeah, that's Shounen. I mean, if you think about Yukihiro Soma, he acts like a Shounen protagonist. So there you go. Food Wars, another recommendation. And a couple of others that are actually getting brought up in the channel are really good too. One Punch Man. We didn't even think about that.
One Punch Man. Oh my God. I think I heard they're finally coming out with the second season of One Punch Man after all this time. And that one. Also probably Attack on Titan. I mean,
yeah, that would count.
I feel like that one I would probably also count. Attack on Titan
I've gotten into arguments with people about it. Like Attack on Titan is too depressing for me. It honestly is, but I can understand why people love it the way that they do.
Yeah. Because, I just didn't understand Levi as a character for the longest time, because before I started watching, and I told you this before I started watching Attack on Titan, you know, everyone was like, oh, Levi, he's such a good character. So I'm thinking Levi's the main character. And then I started watching, I'm like, well, who is Levi and where is he? And then he shows up in the middle of the season.
Yeah, you're talking do anything. You're talking the head of the Hunter Corps, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like he's the child prodigy kind of character. And no, it follows. Is it Aaron? Is that his name?
Aaron. Yeah, his name is Aaron. And I was just like, oh, well, then who's Aaron? But then of course I fell in love with Mikasa. I was just like, oh, she's badass. She's saving Aaron's butt every chance she gets. Love it.
See, what's funny is I can't do the series, but that live action movie, that is hilarious in some way.
It's hilariously bad.
Yes.
I watched it. I watched it with one of my friends who actually hadn't finished watching Attack on Titan. So we and him, we watched the part 1 and then we saw part 2. And he saw part 1 and was like, I like that. And I was like, what is wrong with you? I'm like,
the cool part is like the first part is dark. Okay, it fits in with the pacing, but then when you take part 2 and put it all together, I mean, it is absolutely silly. Like I went in, so we actually did a group review for my other podcast, Geek News, where I brought our panel to go see Attack on Titan part 1 and part 2. And by the end of that, and Alex is actually here, so he can clarify for me, but I think we were all busting a gut by the end of that. Just like, this is so stupid that it's hilarious. This is like the only way I can actually take Attack on Titan is through this silly way of telling the story. I don't know why, but it works for me so much more than the series. Another suggestion that we actually got was Angelic Lair. I don't know too much about that show off the top of my head. Another one that we actually brought up that I think would fit, we brought this up with the Magical Girl anime one, but I think it actually fits more into the Shonen, is the Fate series. I think that's what it's called. Fate Stay.
Fate Stay Night.
Fate Stay Night, stuff like that. That would probably work too for some people.
I've seen one. I think I've seen one of that series, and I didn't understand it, so I didn't continue on. But that was the only one that I watched. Another one I could think of is Mirai Nikki, the Future Diaries.
Okay, yeah.
That's Shonen, and I enjoyed that series a lot because Gasai was just a crazy girl from the beginning.
Yeah.
But she just had me going from the beginning of the entire series, and I loved it.
I will also point this one out too, just for the heck of it. If you want to enjoy the sillier tropes of shonen, sit somebody down and have them watch Yu-Gi-Oh. Just seriously, have them sit down and watch Yu-Gi-Oh, because you'll laugh your butt off after a while. I enjoyed that early on, but then when it got so outlandish, I'm just like, I can't even watch it seriously anymore. I pick up my favorite episode and go, oh look, it's Kaiba coming out with belts on his arms again.
Yep.
So
even another one is Beelzebub. That was actually kind of funny. It's considered a shonen, but that one where the kid has to take care of it, the kid has to take care of like the devil's child, and he's also kind of like a delinquent himself, and it's so weird, but it's so funny because he's supposed to be like a hero, but he's not really a hero. He's kind of like Yusuke. He's like that anti kind of a hero, but you kind of you go to love him because he's really funny. He has to take care of this kid, and he shows compassion for this kid. Exactly. It's so weird of a show.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we've actually run out of time for this podcast, but this has actually been a really fun experience. And I think we've given plenty of stuff for people to just go look into for the heck of it if you've never even seen some of these series, because like, I don't know, every single series you brought up, I'm sure that's the same case with me, but there's just so much there that people can enjoy out of it. And look, as much as shonen is a serious kind of genre, there's silliness added to it as well. I mean, we didn't even bring up JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which is shonen. We didn't bring up One Piece, which is very outlandish. There's so many more series that you can technically go into that you would just enjoy the heck out of. So much so that, you know, I have a feeling this is not even going to be the only episode where we talk about shonen anime, because there's so much to be able to go over. And actually, my buddy, the Shadow Blazer, did point out that technically Cowboy Bebop is shonen. So we could get away with it, because that's like the ultimate gateway drug anime for a lot of people, because it just fits so many niches together. But yeah, we're actually going to need to go ahead and wrap this up. I really wish we could go further than this.
I know.
That's why I try to keep these things as limited as we can. But first of all, I want to say thank you to Shay for showing up and in taking part in this conversation, as well as for the live chat. This has actually been a really amazing episode. And if people want to follow your content, Shay, how do they do that? I'll let you go ahead and plug yourself for ways people can follow your content and your blogs, your reviews, all that stuff.
Yeah, so you can follow my content on youtube.com/Shay Taree. On there, I post anime reviews, discussions. I post 3 times a week. I post Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. You have to follow me on my blog, which is animereviewergirl.com. I also post my YouTube videos on there as well, so you can also watch them there. And of course, I'm also on Twitter, which is Shay Taree as well. And yeah, you can find me all on there.
Yeah, and I actually couldn't recommend you guys more to Shay, because I'm a solid fan of the Motivational Mondays that you do. I've seen, like, there have been a couple of weeks where you haven't been able to do anything, and I understand that, but I always think that those are really good to be able to watch, especially during like the January to March doldrums, where everybody kind of has that trouble of getting started in the morning. So I'm a solid fan of that. And I also have enjoyed a lot of your reviews, in particular your Food Wars review, which I think you actually said you'll never go back. And I'm like, oh, please, you have to go and see season 2 and 3, because it gets so much weirder after that.
I saw season 2. I need to watch season 3.
In fact, I'm trying to get the Shadow Blazer to watch, because for one simple moment, and you'll have to agree with me on this, right? It was the match between Megumi and I can't remember the guy's name, where it was like the ultimate brawl between the two of them. I can't remember his name, but he's Ami Nakari's assistant.
Oh yes,
Ryubo, I think is his name. Where they actually fought, and then all of a sudden, like we're hearing about how violent and ruthless he is, so much so that he took the head guy's robe and ripped it off, kind of thing. Like, because that's how you know this guy's satisfied. He rips his robe off. And when they actually get to her food and they give their scores and all that, and they start escorting them all out, all of a sudden you see the head guy go, and we're just like, what the heck? And he goes off into the bathroom. We find out that she actually did make him rip his clothes, just not the ones you thought.
Yeah.
Because I think it was his loincloth that got ripped. of how ruthless her food was. That's how
It's like
silly anime
crazy.
can get.
Yes, it can get very silly.
So if people want to be able to follow me and my content, because I do know that we actually have a couple of new faces that I'm guessing are subscribed to you, you can do so on this channel at Drac2326. That is where at least the first year's worth of Why We Geek episodes are there. So everything from Disney all the way up to Star Wars, as we covered Last Jedi last year. And so you guys have plenty of stuff to take care of there. I also do game reviews, let's plays, stuff like that you guys can all follow on that channel. If you want to follow me on social media, you could follow my Facebook page, which is DracLP on Facebook. And then you can also follow me on Twitter at Drac2326. And you can ask me of, what are my favorite shonen anime, what I would recommend, what is completely outlandish for people. And keep in mind, guys, like, I don't take anime seriously anymore. I can't do it. There's just so much stuff to laugh at. Especially when you look at how hammy some characters can actually get. In fact, me and Alex have been making this joke, like one of these days we're going to sit down and we're going to watch Free together. Because we got shown Free abridged. So like our buddy Aldo Gomez showed us Free abridged and we were laughing our butts off, and we just kind of looked at the animation and went, one of these days we just have to sit down and watch this show for how weird it must get. So those are the ways to be able to follow me. If you want to follow the podcast directly, the first thing that I recommend to you guys is support the RSS feed, which is whywegeek.podomatic.com. Eventually, this episode, even though it live streamed on YouTube, is going to make its way into the RSS feed so other people can enjoy it. And you can either catch that on the actual RSS feed on Podomatic, or you can look it up on iTunes or Google Play for Android users. So you can do that. And you can also follow Why We Geek on Twitter at Why We Geek. And you'll get up-to-the-minute information when I have a brand spanking new episode set up, who's going to possibly be in it, things like that. I kept kind of secret for this one because it was supposed to be so paired, and it's actually really sad we couldn't make the Magical Girl one work out with Lita. But that's just the way things go. And really quick, I also want to plug this because, again, you are one half of the Senshi Annie Girls podcast, which I believe goes once a month, isn't it?
Yeah, we try to go once a month. It's a little bit harder for us to coordinate since we are on two very different sides of the world. So we're trying our best. Yeah,
you're like looking at a 15-hour difference. I got a 17-hour difference with Lita. That it's pretty ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys do once a month, and you guys take on various topics. It doesn't necessarily need to be a series. You guys can take on being a fan, or being specifically. I think you guys have done one where you're a specific fan of manga compared to anime. There's so much more that you guys can check out there. And you can also follow them. So you can follow them on YouTube at Senshi Annie Girls Podcast. And then also you can follow them on Twitter, which is Senshi Annie Girls. So you guys can figure out when they're going to be going live and their guests and what they're going to be talking about that particular episode that they take on. So that's actually going to go ahead and do it for us. So thank you once again to Shay for showing up for Why We Geek. This has been really, really fun, actually. And hopefully we can, now again, this is going to depend on you guys, but I mean, if you guys want her to come back, she's already told me that she's got plenty of other stuff she can talk about. So if you guys want to see her back, let me know in the comments below, and I'd be more than happy to bring her back. And continue to show your support for the podcast so we can continue to do this for many more years to come. And of course, for me and for Sherry, we'll see you guys next time for the next episode of Why We Geek. Die! We got it done! Die! We did it!
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Oh, this has been amazing. This has actually been a lot better than I thought it was going to be. In fact, it's one of those things where I really wish I could keep things going, but I actually got to go pick up my daughter. So I could probably go for another 10 minutes if people want to bring up stuff in the chat. But thank you so much, Shay, for showing up on this one.
You're welcome.
Again, it makes me really sad that we couldn't make things work out with Lita. I think we'll try and I think right now her and me are talking, like, she's got another podcast in the works. We'll try and see if we can do a guest star there, so we can meet more with her schedule. But this at least will work. And then, if you want to actually, not only if people want to have you back, if you want to come back, you're more than welcome to. You brought up a ton of other subjects to be able to go into. And that's the cool part about Why We Geek, is like, I have a list of stuff that I just want to talk about. And all I need is just the guest who wants to talk about this. And I can go, oh, scratch that off the list. So
trust me, if you want to have me back, I'm totally open to coming back. This is always a lot of fun. I love talking about and geeking out about a whole bunch of different topics. Like I said before, Disney, Harry Potter, comic books, like Marvel, DC. Oh, I'm open.
See, what's really sad is like the next episode that we actually have going is going to be Marvel, but I've already got my roster set, and it's just because
no worries.
A lot of our Geek News panel is actually going to go and see Infinity War together, so we're gonna do the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a Why We Geek episode. But here's the thing: just because I am doing that doesn't mean I'm not going to approach Marvel later on. Because, I mean, for crying out loud, the February episode, if people had seen it on the RSS feed, is Disney live action, where just so happens a cousin of mine who, spoiler alert, if you couldn't actually figure this out, she kind of works at Disney. She can't share anything, so don't expect to get spoilers there. But she's a big Disney fan. Like I've made the joke at family parties. She's my Disneypedia. Okay, like, when I don't know something, I go to her. And we did live action, and she was very insistent on us talking about Marvel and Star Wars. And so I'm like, okay, let's do it. Because literally we can get into the stuff over and over and over again. Whether we just go into a genre, whether we go into a series, or I'm not even against like going into a movie and just saying why it's awesome kind of thing. Yeah,
because I know me and my boyfriend and I are actually going to Disneyland in a couple weeks. We're going for Dapper Day, so we're going in a couple weeks. So we're both very, very excited about that. And we also bought tickets for Infinity War.
Nice.
Made sure we bought tickets for that. And I remember laughing with my dad about it. I was like, "Oh yeah, me and my boyfriend went and saw Black Panther again." And he was just like, "Again?" So now we've seen it 4 times. So everyone's like,
"Oh, you beat me." I was going to do 2 because me and my wife were talking about doing it, but sadly she's pregnant. So like getting to a movie is kind of hard right now. I have a feeling we're going to watch the crap out of Black Panther when it gets out there. And the other thing that took away from it was Pacific Rim came out, and
we saw that too.
I am on the freaking hype train for that movie. I have no problem saying that, by the way. I have no problem saying it. In fact,
my boyfriend had me watch it.
I'm one of those guys that actually has like declared war on the internet, because like when I see all the negative reviews, and most of them, the funniest thing is these reviewers have seen the first Pacific Rim. So at that point, it's like, you've seen Pacific Rim. You know what you were walking in for. You knew what you were stepping into, and you had the same problem. I'm sorry. That's not the fault of the movie. That's on you. So, but yeah, because I've also been on the hype train for Ready Player One and a couple of others, but I'm so looking forward to Infinity War.
Oh man, my boyfriend and I, we just saw Ready Player One, and we absolutely loved it. When we went and saw Black Panther, we saw it 3 times within the same weekend, because we saw it. We had literally went to Disneyland for Valentine's Day, came back Friday morning. Friday night, we went and saw Black Panther because we already had tickets for it. Saw it again on Sunday. And then our friends were like, "Oh, let's go see it on Tuesday." We're like, "Okay, this is our 3rd time seeing it." But then we saw it in D-Box. That's when the seats moved. So that was fun. I was like,
that's one of those things I would love to try with a movie like Black Panther. I don't think it works for every single movie, but for something like Black Panther, it works.
Yes, it worked. It worked very well. It still worked amazingly for the car scene when Shooty's in the car chasing down the villain. It was amazing.
Oh, that'd be hilarious, actually. Doing that in D-Box, that'd be hilarious. All right. Well, unfortunately, I hate to cut and run, but I got to go get my daughter from the babysitter and wait for mommy to get home. So I can't begin to say it enough. Thank you so much, Shay. This has been amazing to be able to do.
Oh, you're welcome. Once again, thank you so much for inviting me to do it. If you ever want to invite me to do it again, I'm totally open for it. Just definitely let me know, and we can work things out.
I could already tell you, like, the next couple of months are already set, but I'm already kind of working on the tail end of this year. And if I can make it work, I will reach out to you via Twitter and see if we can make it work again.
Perfectly. Sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Shay, and have a great rest of the day.
All right, you too, and thanks again.
All right, take care.
Bye. Bye.